What's good, homies? Welcome back to the Drafts and Draughts podcast. I'm Joe, aka Sultan. Wait a second.
But now, I'm thinking I'm back.
What do we have here? Is this the man, the myth, the legend, Dave, aka Disaster himself in the building? Dave, what's going on?
We're back, baby. We're so back. I'm good. Actually, I thought of a new podcast format. Didn't run it by you, but I was thinking about something when I was listening. So I was listening to your season thoughts, I guess is whatever your last one was called.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't remember the name, but yeah, especially just running through the season, like some of the things that happened and how you're going to address it going forward. As I was listening to that, I was thinking what actually would be a sick podcast format, just in general, is if we created like a rebuttals. So we never did a podcast together, or we rarely do podcasts together. But every time you do a podcast, I then come with a rebuttal podcast, or vice versa.
Oh, I like that. Where like I say it, you take notes on everything I say, and then you say, "Here's what Joe said that I liked that I didn't like. Here's what I actually really thought was cool that he mentioned," which is probably nothing. Here's
I actually kind of like a sick, like if wherever you do that on any topic, I just think it'd be a sick way to format a podcast.
I love it. Definitely down. Assuming that you're probably not going to attend every episode from here on out, that we actually have an opportunity to do that.
Well, I might do it for your last one. I might do it for the season thoughts, because I did have some thoughts that were the same, and I had some thoughts that were different. So I thought it would be an interesting one.
I love that. Definitely. Well, anyways, guys, it's Monday, December 23rd. We are a few hours away from championship week. We got the Packers game ongoing in the background right now. I'm pretty sure Josh Jacobs had a chance to score 3 touchdowns, but only walked away with 1. As with last episode, I shouted out some loyal listeners, and a couple of you texted me and said it was bullshit. I didn't call you guys out too. So just wanted to shout out Craig Bucknell Burnett, aka the East Dillon Giraffes, for my Superflex League, and Chris Munier, one of my coworkers, the one who introduced me to Zach. Thanks also for listening to every single episode and clearly taking it to heart that I didn't call you guys out. But Dave, what's new? What else what have you been up to?
So I got a new job. Been doing a ton with kind of some side business things, just really, and then just a ton of just family stuff. It's been just crazy with kids being sick. It's just been a wild ride, and I feel like every day from 5:30 or 6 a.m. until 8:30, 9 p.m. something's happening, and then at 9 p.m. I finally just relax, either by myself or with my wife, and that's that. But a lot happened on the Pokemon card front. Been doing a ton of that, and had a birthday in there, and yeah, man, I don't know, like that's kind of
I know it's been a while. You get all your Christmas presents wrapped yet?
No, that's I'm doing it after the show. I brought up to my wife 2 days ago, no, maybe longer, like last week. I was like, hey, we got a lot of presents to wrap, and I was like, I really don't want to do this Christmas Eve, and I just
are you working tomorrow?
No, we're closed.
Okay.
But I can't wrap with all the kids around. And then I did just find out that I also have to build 2 pretty big things for the board. We have like a 2-seater truck and then a table and chairs that I was like, hey, well, how do you want to wrap those? And Danielle said, oh, I thought I was going to build. She said I was going to assemble them. And I kind of laughed. She's like, why are you laughing? I was like, because you've never assembled anything. I was like, you're saying you anticipate me to assemble that? She's like, yeah. I was like, oh, Christmas Eve at night? That sounds like I'd love to spend my Christmas Eve at night doing that.
Oh, man. That's so funny.
So tomorrow night's booked. Tonight's this. And then after this, I got to wrap some other presents.
Hell yeah. Well, dude, I'm so glad you're here. It's nice having you back. It's been fun taking on the challenge of doing them by myself, but the episodes surely aren't the same. And I may give you some ribbing and jibing when you're not here, but it's definitely the podcast. The logo is meant for 2. The pod's meant for 2. So I'm thrilled to get into it. With that said, let's get into a draft review. You better have a beer ready for me. What do you got over there?
How could I not?
What the hell is that?
It's a little Haze Toberfest. It's actually a picture from Oktoberfest in Germany.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's a hazy IPA, obviously.
Nice.
It's from Social Project. It's a little old, a couple months old, obviously, but thought it would be a good one for the show.
Yeah, well, you clearly forgot the cadence. Give me a live crack, taste, and a rating. Or do we do it at the same time?
I'm pretty sure we cracked together, buddy.
You're right. You're right. We do that. All right. You're right. Okay. No,
I'm pretty sure you always said a premature crack, and then I was like,
I forget. I'm so used to just doing it on my own. All right. Well, I have here the 7 Saws 7 New England IPA. And Dave, I don't know if you've heard of this brand. It's actually a brewery in Holden, my hometown, Holden, Mass. I picked it up on the way to go see Dan tonight, PME Warrior. He's a little sad that none of his teams are left still contending for anything, but I got to see the kids, and I did already actually try one of these, unfortunately, but I'm gonna do a live crack and pretend I haven't with you guys. So that being said, now let's get to a live crack. Dave's locked in on something right now.
My microphone was wrong, so I sound a lot better.
You sound a lot better, yeah.
Cool. Fix that. All right, ready?
Yeah.
3, 2. Love it. Cheers.
Cheers, bud. All right, I'll go first. So I forgot to mention the can art. It's got this it's a silvery white, almost snowy looking can with like pine tree silhouettes at the bottom. I really like this. I think I would rather rate the can art than the actual flavor of the beers at this point. Like, I think it's just awesome. But this is super juicy, zesty, spicy. It's got some pop to it. I think I'm going to give it a 3.7. I'd give it a 4, flat out 4. I think it's one of the better IPAs I've tried on the pod. How's yours? How's the social project or whatever it is?
You're like Dave Portnoy with your 7s, dude. Just handing out 4s like candy. It's solid. It's actually still pretty good a couple weeks later. So this brewery is notorious for not having good canning, and the carbonation is usually bad after like a week. And so for it to still be good at 2 months, I'm actually really impressed. So I'm gonna give it a 4.25. It was like probably a 4.5 when it was fresh, but this is probably my favorite. This brewery does the best hazy IPAs in Northwest Arkansas. So shout out.
Oh, good. Project. Next time, have we gone there together? I can't remember. Because I think we did. No, it was when we went to the little where we showed the guy our pod. Some guy was doing Dynasty, was showing us his teams. We were saying at the bar.
Maybe it was there. Maybe it was there. That definitely was there.
It was an empty bar. There's like nobody there. But
that social project for sure.
Yeah, it was actually really those were really good beers. Okay, good. I'm glad I remember it.
The disrespect.
Okay. Anyways, on to the OTQ. Dave, you started mentioning it to me in the beginning, but I'll let you you can handle it this right now.
By the way, it seems like your mic. It sounds like you're having like a little robot. Little weird feedback. I don't know if that's just on my end or if that's actually in the pod, but OTQ. So OTQ, what is the best or your preferred playoff format? I started thinking about this week in playoffs. I found out in my other league, in my family league, 8 people made playoffs. I didn't fucking know. I didn't even think that would be an option. And I finished like 10th. So not that it would have changed anything, but if I was in 9th, or imagine I finished 8th and I actually made the playoffs and I didn't even like reset. I didn't even check the lineup, didn't do waivers, nothing. So it's just going to say, okay, how many people make playoffs on a standard, 12-team league? How many make playoffs and how do they get in? Is it just total record? Is it, the top 3? If it say 6 make it, top 3, it's their best record. Then the next 3 highest scoring get in. Is it all highest scoring? Is it just all by record? Is there divisions, not divisions? What would be your answer?
A really good question, actually, because as you were saying that, I was thinking about that. I have, I'm in 6 leagues, 4 dynasties, 2 redrafts, and most of the playoffs are similar. I'll say the carbon copy default format, I would say, is no more than 50% of your league should be making playoffs. So if you're a 10-team league, it should be 4 max. If you're a 12-team league, it should be 6 max. If you're an 14-team league, it should also be 6 max. In my opinion, I think it's the best way is to encourage that the regular season should matter. And what's interesting is in most of my leagues, it's just the best 6 teams by record make it. Obviously, in the PDFDL, we have 3 divisions. So instead of it being ordered by record, it's the top 3 division winners get seeds 1, 2, and 3. And then the next 3 best teams get wild card berths, which I thought personally, it was so fucking cool. I loved, and I told this to Bohm, I told this to the Beavers before it was decided. In week 14, my team, the Wyverns, and the Beavers were the number 1 and number 2 seed. And we should technically, in a traditional format, we would have both gotten buys if that was how the league was decided. But because we are in the same division, we were playing for the bye in week 14 because whoever won that was going to win our division. The other team was going to slide to the 4 seed. And that was, to me, I thought that drama was cool. Now, obviously, in hindsight, it sounds easy to say, seeing as I was the one who won and got the bye and the Beavers lost and then lost in the first round. That's tough. But truthfully, I was saying this in week 13. I think it's really cool that not only did my league, the weeks 13 and 14 matter way more than they would have normally. I'm pretty sure your division was up for grabs the entire week 12, 13, and 14. Same with the East division with Gilday and Brent both having a chance to secure a bye, went out for a bye. The McGiblets had a chance to win a bye by winning out and the Sasquatch losing or whatever. Like there was so much drama, I felt like way more than normal. And I love that. And one thing that we do is we reseed. So the number one team faces the lowest remaining team in the playoffs. I think that's a cool perk to give the one seed a benefit. I'm in one league where the top 5 teams based on record get in, and the 6th seed is the highest remaining points scored of the bottom 7 teams. So I think it's a cool way of kind of rewarding somebody who maybe got screwed over by schedule luck, rather than just saying the top 6 teams by record get in, which is what our format technically is, kind of, without the division buys. I think it's unique, but I personally think winning your games matters. I think I just like the traditional way of your top 6 teams make playoffs, 2 teams get buys, 4 teams play in a wild card round. And I like the reseeding element. What about you? I know I just said a lot, but is there anything different there that you like or that you disagree with or agree with?
No, I'm the same way. I think records should be the number one deciding factor. I do like the points for aspect, but the more I thought about it too, you could have a couple teams where you had like 2 or 3 players get 50 points randomly in a week. That's a huge fucking spike. And if your team's like solid, just average, like, maybe a top 6, top 5 team, but now you have all those factors where you have these spike games on elite players. I mean, your points can just really skyrocket amongst the league, which isn't a bad thing, but you don't get bonus points if you're a NBA team or an NFL team by scoring more points, by scoring or whatever, the 70 points that the Dolphins put up. They didn't make the playoffs because they got 70 points scored. They just got to win. And so it's something I really like. And I think that our division just happened to be, now that we have the extra game in the season, it's now perfect. You play each of your division teams twice. And so we have 3 divisions, 4 teams in there. And so hypothetically, you would need 6 other teams in each of each division, which they play each team twice too. So the odds of them all being the top teams, top 6 total scoring teams, and the other division just is awful. The odds are pretty slim. And so it does work out really well, just the way we have it set up with the 12 of them. So I do like our format a ton. I think, to me, it's my favorite format. The only thing I'd potentially add in, like, do you add another 2 teams? This is kind of interesting in my head. But it's also
team playoff or 2 teams to the league. Oh, okay.
Yeah, like if you had an 18 team playoff, but then it's also the kind of the same thing too, where you have college football right now. I just saw something where they were talking about, hey, like it's a college football thing now, just a bust, because like I think the average gap of a win was like 19.6 points, and I was like, well, that's it's like, what's the point then? And in fantasy, obviously a little more random, but it's the same point too. Do you just want to have like, what's the point if it's not actually going to yield a different result? So anyways, I thought it was kind of interesting to think about it, but no, I really like our format where it's wins, 6 in divisions. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's great. One other thing I've heard on podcasts, which I've never played, but I think I might have proposed it in our league last year and it got shot down, but I'm going to propose it in my league next year, which is where in the first round, the 3 seed gets to pick their opponent. And in the second round, the 1 seed gets to pick their opponent, but the 1 seed can't pick the 2 seed. So I think it's a cool way of kind of rewarding, like, especially now that we have the 1, 2, since we have 3 divisions and the 1, 2, and 3 are the division winners, for the 3rd division winner who doesn't get a bye to also then get a choice at who they play. I think is a kind of neat perk that potentially would make sense in our league. And I think I'm going to at least offer it up for grabs. I don't know how it's going to play out. I imagine most of the time, to not mess with the feng shui, you're just going to pick the team you would have been assigned. But okay, I don't know how else to check.
I don't know if you want to unplug and plug back in. But yeah, I agree. I think we voted on it last year. It either was voted for or it's up for vote this year. I forget which one we had. But
yeah, we voted for it last year. Let me know if this sounds better or worse or the same.
Yep, you're good.
Weird. I don't know why that was happening. Maybe it was picking it up out of. I know one time it was picking up audio out of my controller microphone, which is crazy.
You sounded okay. It just seemed like it felt like the core was almost like half plugged in. But no, you sound
Gotcha. Great. Cool. No worries. Shit. All right, let's move on to the actual pod. So, what we're talking about today, like I mentioned last episode, and I kind of set the stage for a little bit, is our superlatives, which is we're going to be going through talking about, we're 16 weeks through the season. I think we have a pretty general grasp on who the fantasy MVPs are, who are the rookies of the year, who are the breakout players, so players that were maybe had some expectations that had yet to meet them and broke out, or players that had very little expectations but broke out and are now mainstays, dynasty pieces. And then if we have time, I'd like to get to, the comeback player of the year, guys who maybe had down seasons that there was some skepticism as to whether or not they would be strong fantasy or dynasty assets going forward. And they turned it around this year. And then kind of close it out with how could we potentially use some of this information that, talking about these players? Was this some stuff that we could have seen coming and that maybe we can start to think about for 2025 players that fit the criteria of potential MVPs that could be breakouts next year? Again, we're not doing heavy hitting analysis. We're just kind of going through, talking about it, going off vibes, the Dave special. But let's get into the easy stuff. Let's talk about MVP here. And again, we're going to try to split it up so that players don't fall into multiple categories. Like the obvious one here is you could call Brock Bowers the MVP, the rookie of the year, and the breakout player of the year for tight ends. We're not going to name him the same player for all three. So let's try to be creative with how we use each category. With that being said, let's talk about the MVPs. Dave, first instinct here. Let's start at the top. Most important position in football, most important fantasy position in a super flex league. Not quite as important in one QB, but still scores the most points on a weekly basis. Who is your QB MVP this season? Who do you think fantasy players are most rewarded? Which if you're blindly picking a random redraft league, which QB are you expecting to see guaranteed in that championship game?
I think depending on where you got him value wise, I mean, I think it's going to be Joe Burrow for me. I drafted him a good amount this season. I think we talked about it a few times when I was looking at what to do, who to draft in some certain leagues, and we kept going back and forth on Joe Burrow between us. And you were pretty adamant he was going to have a great year, and sure enough, he has. But he's had a really good year, and so for me,
sneaky good too.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the QB for me where I haven't had him in one of my leagues, and I finished in 10th, so maybe he's not the one that's going to see you in the championship, but he was one who you weren't paying top 3. You might be paying top 6 to top 8 when you bought him, but he has just been so consistent, so good all year long. And for me, he's someone who, if you drafted the rest of your team well, then he's for sure a chance to be on the championship team this year.
Yeah, I really like why you picked Joe Burrow here. I had him as my comeback player of the year, so I'll have to come up with a new one. But it's again, why I like your pick here for MVP is twofold. One, you got him late. He was a 7th, 8th round pick in redraft this year, which means you were probably able to build a pretty strong team around him. And two, especially in best ball, you probably drafted Jamar Chase or T. Higgins if you were stacking with Joe Burrow, and both of them on a per game basis have been phenomenal. So you're 100% right. I can't believe I didn't think of Joe Burrow as my MVP. I couldn't decide between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Those are my two MVPs. I guess you could give them co-MVPs for the sake of value. I think Allen was going ahead of Lamar in redraft season, so I'll say Lamar was the MVP in a sense that you got him a little bit later in the 4th versus Allen in the 3rd. But you really can't go wrong with either. I wouldn't be surprised if every single redraft league had Lamar and Allen in the finals. And in most dynasties, if you would structure a team around Allen and Lamar, actually, ironically, PDFDL is a matchup of Allen versus, well, it's not, I don't mean to call it over yet, but it's looking like it's going to be Allen versus Lamar in the PDFDL. Yeah, PDFDL final. Actually, not the case in my Superflex leagues. I don't think Lamar or Allen made it in either of my Superflex leagues, which is kind of crazy when I think about it. But yeah, they've put up 25 points per game. They're both Konami code, cheat code quarterbacks. Josh Allen just put up 100 points in 3 weeks or 90 points in 2 weeks. Like, he's unstoppable. He's an actual freak who can take over a game and win any week for you anytime. That's my MVP. They should be going at the early second next year. But yeah, let's move on to running back. My running back MVP, kind of alluded to it earlier, Saquon Barkley. I mean, you got him in the second round this year. I think he's the only running back in the top 2 rounds that smashed. I think CMC kind of busted. Brees Allen was okay. Obviously, Gibbs and Bijan did well, but they were going ahead of Saquon, and Saquon's outscoring them by 3 or 4 points per game. Henry had a great stretch. He's kind of tailed off a little bit. I think you're getting him in the third, so he's another good case for an MVP here. But Saquon to me, he had multiple 30, 40-point weeks. He also was giving that consistency on a week-to-week basis, and he didn't cost you a top 6 pick. So to me, he's the MVP who probably carried you guys this season.
Well, you just listed all the guys I was going to talk about.
I know. Sorry.
It's okay. I was going to say, I'm trying to think of the other categories here too in consideration, but I had Henry up there. I think I'll go a different one. I'll just go Kamara. I thought Kamara, although he's injured, and so it's hard to rule that out for a whole year because he was looking so great. I know he kind of struggled when their tight end came back, but as a whole, I thought Kamara was having an elite season, and he was someone that most people wrote off similar to Henry, but was just having an awesome time just balling out for the Saints. And so for me, Kamara was kind of the MVP that was and maybe it's kind of come out of nowhere because he wasn't bad last year either, but for him to still have that season when he was so cheap kind of coming into the draft, I think I got him a ton in the 5th, 6th, 7th round in redraft.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's a really good case. Even though he's hurt and it's tough to name him the MVP, he certainly should be in consideration for the sheer fact that I think you could have got him in the 6th or 7th. Did he have like suspension concerns this year? Like, why was he going so late? I don't even remember why.
Yeah, he just kind of ended the year bad. Like he didn't, I don't know. It's just old guy. Like I think it's everyone's narrative. He was older, didn't have an elite season last year. Like he was still good. He was still whatever, I think a top 12-ish, but toward the end of 12. And so he has 2 years in the 12-ish. He's going to be drafted in the running back 12 to 18, I think is where it was.
Nice. But I'm going to switch up the format here. We're just going to alternate one at a time. Like disagree, or, not going to do 2 for every single choice. Rather than you pick an MVP, I pick an MVP. I feel like that's getting long drawn out. So you're up. Your wide receiver MVP. Who do you got? Let's talk about it.
All right, my wide receiver MVP, I have. I don't know if I can call him a comeback. I'm just going to say he's my MVP. My MVP is Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, it's not quite a comeback here because he didn't really fall off. He just was consistently average forever, and then
I had him as the comeback.
Yeah, so he was top 24 forever, and I kept saying if this guy actually gets a quarterback, it's going to be great. He's been on my team roster this entire time. I wouldn't really let him go for cheap, and finally this year you could see how elite he was. And so for me, he's my MVP. Is just someone you could have got him, got probably in that same range, 5 through 7, and for him to ball out and be a top 5 wide receiver is just amazing.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable. Finally, everything that Matt Harmon's been preaching, that Terry McLaurin is just one QB away from being a superstar, finally comes to fruition. Hard for me not to give Jamar Chase the general MVP, scoring 25 points per game, but Terry McLaurin, I think he deserved to be on one of these superlatives, and I had him as the comeback player of the year for wide receiver position. So I think he's well worth being considered for MVP. Tight end, the obvious answer is Brock Bowers, but I don't have him as my MVP because he's going to be the rookie. He's the rookie of the year for tight end. So I had a tough time deciding between George Kittle and Trey McBride. And I think I'm going to go with Kittle because you got Kittle a couple rounds later in redraft. And on Dynasty, you probably could have bought Kittle for maybe a second coming into the year because he's 30 years old. Probably not a second, but you probably didn't have to spend much more than a late first. During your rookie draft, you probably could have shipped off the 111 and gotten George Kittle in return and felt gross about it. And by the end of this year, you're going to feel great. He's scoring 16 plus points per game. You would have got him in the 7th, 8th round in redraft. He's been unfucking believable. And he's got a fraud quarterback and he's still doing all this. So I just can't, I just wanted to see Dave's reaction. So, our tight end MVP, Dave, agree, disagree? How do you feel about Kittle? Or would you name somebody else?
So I think it also depends on how you rank things too. Like, is MVP higher than Rookie of the Year? Because then I think you have to go Brock Bowers for MVP. But assuming we're just going to go with him for ROI, I love Kittle. Kittle's a great pick. I think you also could have gone Trey McBride. I think both them are Trey McBride to obviously repeat what he had been doing, and Kittle's obviously been a great tight end, but McBride to still be top 3, I think just shows that how elite he's probably going to be for the next 10 years. But yeah, I think Kittle's having a great season with Ayuk getting injured and Debo kind of being in and out of the lineup. CMC being out has just been a huge help for him. So I don't know if I'm buying into it as like I wouldn't buy him. I wouldn't buy him top 5 again next year. I think he's probably in the 6 through 12 again. And if he's being charged as top 5, I'm probably not paying it. So, but yeah, this season, league winner, especially if you had him all season.
Yeah, I guess there's no rhyme or reason to how I was kind of trying to go MVP as some hybrid between the cost you would have had to pay in Dynasty to acquire these guys, but also the expectation level, like where it's like, but also the production. Like it was hard for me not to name like Chase and Saquon the MVPs, no matter how expensive they are, because
that's fair.
Chase has put up 24 points per game. The next closest is 19 with 19.9 with Chris Godwin, who's hurt, and it's like. He's just such a like Saquon. Like even though he was expensive, 22 points per game versus 19 out of what is it, Jahmyr Gibbs or whoever number 2 is. It was just hard for me not to put him number 1. But yeah, when it comes to tight end, where they're so close together, clustered, you can make a case for the cost of the player mattering more. And McBride was costing you a first plus at the start of the year. Kittle was maybe a first, so that's kind of why I was leaning on him. And same with Bowers. Bowers cost you the 104. In 1 QB coming in. So he was a little expensive. Yeah, let's move on to the rookies.
Wait, don't forget Rashee Rice at 21.6.
That's true. If we're moving his injury game. But rookies of the year. So I'll go first this time since I think you went first on the last QB? One. Yeah, so QB, yeah. I mean, the obvious answer. Jaden Daniels is the rookie of the year. The guy has already proven that he has the same ceiling or more or less the same ceiling as Lamar and Josh Allen. Granted, I don't think he put any 50-point games up, but still that getting over 30 to me is you have that top tier fantasy ceiling on top of showcasing the fact that he is a good real life NFL QB. That's the difference between him and like a guy like Anthony Richardson, who has shown he has a fantasy ceiling of high 20s, low 30s, but he's a dog shit real life quarterback where you have to always worry about his value being insulated. You don't have to worry about that with Daniels. He's a locked in at the lowest. I will accept anyone to rank Jaden Daniels is QB5. If you go below that, you're an actual psychopath. Like if you want to say Burrow and Hurts have proven more, they have longevity, and Lamar and Allen, I'm not going to fight you. And actually, okay, if you want to put Mahomes in there, I really can't fight you on that either because he's legendary, but I think he's a locked and loaded, at worst, low end QB1 for the rest of his rookie contract, and has the obviously potential to be QB1 overall. And he's a very good. He can make all the throws. I can't say anything enough about him. It's giving me chills because it's just like I felt like I screwed it up. Not I didn't screw it up, but I traded out of the 103 in my Superflex league, so I could trade down to 105 so I could draft Drake May because I was like, he's going to be the best quarterback in this class when it's all said and done. Maybe not the most prolific, all this, but I think he's going to be great. And I'm like, man, if I had Jaden Daniels on my team, I'd be stoked right now. But yeah, that's how I feel.
This guy.
Do you have any different quarterback you'd want to put there? Do you agree, disagree?
No, I totally agree. I think Bo Nix has a serious case, and all I can say is I had 2 people that I loved in this draft. It was Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels, and I said it. I was hammering it in all my drafts for Jaden. I really didn't get a lot of Bo Nix stock, but I kept saying I wouldn't be surprised if Bo Nix is the best QB coming out of this year, and sure enough, they're both 1 and 2. So no, yeah, I love Jaden Daniels. I think I'm super happy that I got him when I got him in our dynasty draft, because he was someone that I thought had to hit, and it's also I think really a good affirmation that you see Caleb kind of not hitting. The other thing that's surprising to me, I actually didn't know until about halfway into the season. Do you know how tall Jaden Daniels actually is?
I don't know, 6'3".
Yeah, he's 6'4". I don't know. Because he's so
smaller.
I thought he was like 5. For some reason, I thought I put him like in like the 6 foot. No one ever talked to him was super short, so I put him like the 6 footish range. But damn, he's 6'4". Like he's taller than Bo Nix, taller than Caleb by a decent bit. Like I don't know, I was kind of surprised when I saw that like in like week 6. I was like, damn, like he's just scrawny because he's just fucking tall.
Yeah. I mean, the hard thing is, and it's hard not to compare the game too. Like when you watch him, and it sounds like it's race based, but it's really not. When you watch him in the pocket, it is Lamar Jackson. Like the way he dances, the way he dodges tackles and keeps his eyes downfield. I mean, granted, he does still take off a lot, maybe more than he should, but he's a rookie. Like, he will develop through his progressions. Like, it's just so encouraging to see all the throws he can make. Again, we've done enough glazing of Jaden Daniels. Maybe not enough for Dave's liking. I think we could spend a whole episode on him, but let's move on. Dave, who's your rookie running back of the year?
Just as like someone I'm excited for, or someone that like points.
Just who would you say is the rookie? It doesn't have to be the highest scoring rookie, or else this exercise is a moot point. Just who do you think is the rookie that to you is you're most excited about how they did relative to expectations or draft capital or going forward?
I have two. I'm going to say my pick is Bucky Irving. I'd say Tyrone Tracy's kind of my second.
Those are probably the only two you can really pick.
Well, that's fair, but I don't know. There's some other guys that have some potential there too, but yeah, they're probably the two that are most prominent right now. And so for me, yeah, Bucky just. I mean, I told you all off season that Rashad was washed and just literally a trash bag. And sure enough,
the hard part is you're actually wrong about him being a trash bag, but Bucky is way better than him. I will admit that.
Okay.
But Rashad White is still good.
Rashad's not that good. He's going to go somewhere else. He's going to become, I don't even know. He's
Jerick McKinnon.
Sure. That's fine.
Which was good for a while. Samaj P. Ryan, who's available, I think, in our league.
There you go. That's a good example. Yeah, so no, Bucky Irving is just so fucking good. And I'm so pissed because I was very close to drafting him. I had a few picks in the third round. I almost drafted him way earlier than projected, like way earlier, like half a round earlier. And I was like, no, I have another pick at like the 8. And then I think Bohm drafted him at the 6. And I was so pissed. I even tried to like give him 2 picks for like I really wanted Bucky, and then I really wanted Tyrone Tracy. I missed both of them. So I'm not thrilled about that. Kind of is going to change the way I draft this year, I think, for better or worse. It might make me fuck up, but yeah. So
nice. Yeah, Bucky was my pick too. I mean, I mentioned him on the efficiency episode. You guys already know how I feel about him based on his efficiency metrics. He's an absolute stud. But contrary to what Dave said, the hardest part about Bucky. Hey, Danielle. The hardest part.
Mrs. Claus is here.
Mrs. Claus, I said hi. The hardest part about Bucky, whether you guys like it or not, is that Rashad's not going anywhere in terms of like he's still a good running back. He's the better pass blocker. He's a good pass catcher. He does well when he has a big hole in the offensive line. He's obviously he's not a rushing yard creator like the way Bucky is, but he's still a solid all-around back. And that's what sucks for Bucky's. I don't think he's ever going to get that bell cow usage we would want out of him. Like when you see what Gibbs can do when he takes over a game, is what you could see with Bucky. But until he has that quad injury like David Montgomery, you're not going to really see that. But let's move on to the rookie wide receiver. There's so many to pick from in this category for me. And to me, the rookie of the year is, you're going to be surprised to hear it, Brian Thomas Jr. I think this guy is fucking awesome. I don't have any metrics pulled up, no stats, nothing. It just going off pure. He has the best dog rating in the class. He's an absolute playmaker. And the big problem with Brian Thomas coming out of college was he's not a one trick in terms of that he can only do one thing, but he had very limited route tree based on the tape from all of the experts I actually follow, where like he runs 50% of his routes are the 9, the flag, and the post, which are all deep outbreaking routes or just deep routes in general. And it was like, can he, one, develop any route tree beyond that his rookie year? Probably not. Well, that was wrong. And 2, can he learn how to beat press off the line at the NFL level? Because when he was in college, he was playing opposite Malik Neighbors, who took all the online press coverage. It was just, he was able to get free releases because he wasn't being guarded by those tough corners. And it was like, could Brian Thomas, he's putting up an absolute monster stretch here with Mac fucking Jones throwing him the ball. I'm sorry. I know it sounds dumb. I think I have him right now redrafting the rookie draft. He's the 101 of the rookie draft. I think I take him over Marv. I take him over Neighbors. I take him over Brock Bowers. I take him over every single receiver's skill position player in a one quarterback league. Obviously not over the quarterbacks in Superflex, but to me, he's shown everything you can ask for. The sky is the limit. He is a top 5 wide receiver in waiting. But yeah, that's all I have.
Agree. I think the question for me is Malik there. Like how would it have continued? Had the offensive line held up better for Malik.
Yeah.
But
As a
yeah,
real
I think
quarterback, but
Malik and Brian Thomas are 1A, 1B, however you want to sort them. More surprising thing is Marvin Harrison's just a fucking poop on a stick. But
potato.
um,
He doesn't have a dog in him at all. Like, he's just sad to watch.
yeah,
It's not all his fault, but it's still like
You know
it's
what?
not exciting to watch him play.
It
It reminds me a lot of George Pickens' his rookie year during when he would get down and disgruntled and be like out of the play. And I was like watching the last couple of games, he just looks like he's like defeated.
And to me, it's him and Caleb. They just feel like they had this name and this money that was already kind of funnel to them, that they didn't have to have the dog. And
You're right.
You're seeing it now in the NFL. They're just kind of, I don't know, floppy.
Yeah. All right. You get the luxury of talking about the rookie of the year tight end.
Oh, what a dream. We're gonna go Ben Sinnott.
The senator.
Obviously it's gonna be Brock Bowers, who's just, I mean, a fucking monster. It's so funny as we went through it too, because I think even just in our dynasty league, he went the 103 or 104?
104, which I traded away.
Which had he, well, you didn't need no tight end, but even still, had Matt not gone and got him, I wonder when he actually would have been drafted.
I think he would have fallen.
I think it would have fallen to like the 108, 109, because people were so hateful on the category on the team he actually went over to just see. You just talked about the Brian Thomas with Mac Jones. I mean, I'm even going to say Trevor Lawrence because he's garbage too. To see, seriously, but to see him perform the way he has in the situations he's in, where he loses Devontae, he's all disgruntled, his quarterback's changing around, his running backs can't do anything, and this guy's just putting up numbers. No touchdowns because they can't get down the damn field. But like, it's impressive. It's just so impressive. So yeah, I think he's a top two round pick in redraft next year. And I think he's just going to be amazing. The interesting thing to me will be, well, I guess our head coach is kind of locked in right now, but if he maintains the head coach or not, because the more surprising thing that I think I worry about the tight end side, and maybe you have more analysis on it than I do, and we're not doing analysis here, but it's like how much Laporta's fallen off in the use of him. And I think it's just also because they're using the running game so much more. So if the Raiders get in a great running back room next season, do they stop throwing to Brock Bowers as much? I don't know. But right now he just looks insane.
Yeah, I don't have much on Laporta in terms of his usage. I do know his first read target share came down a lot, like a ton. And I do want to echo what you said about Brock Bowers, because I admit I am in the same boat in terms of I had Brock Bowers ranked as my 108 in this class. Not necessarily because that's what I thought he deserved, but because I had coming into this draft, I had Trey McBride and Dalton Kincaid, so I had him shuffled down. This is actually, just to prove it, this is a text of my rankings that I had sent to my coworker, Chris, back in March, just being like, here's my rankings. I don't know if you can see it. Here was how I tiered out my rankings in one quarterback, which is Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Roe Badunze, Brian Thomas was my 104, then Jonathan Brooks my 105, Lab McConkey 106. So feels pretty good that I had BTJ and McConkey ahead of Xavier Worthy, but I had Brock Bowers pretty low. But yeah, I sent him like, here's my one quarterback, and I sent him my Superflex rankings because he's got a Superflex league too. So yeah, it's a little encouraging seeing that I got Brian Thomas, quote unquote, right. But also disheartening knowing how wrong I was about. I always agree with you. I was like, Brock Bowers is, yeah, he's good, but like we've seen good tight ends. Nothing like this. When you watch him out there, he looks like he's bigger than every player on the field and faster than just about every player on the field, and it's crazy. But anyways,
all right,
long-winded. Yeah,
we're gonna reverse. So otherwise, you're always starting on QB.
No, we've been swapping. So now you started QB on the first one. I started QB on the second category. Now we're getting to comeback player of the year, so you can start on QB. Which again, I do have some stats here for guys. If you didn't have anything pulled up, not stats, just like when they went from RB5 to RB20 to RB3, like stuff like that. If you need help,
I went for the ssame QB. My QB is Baker Mayfield.
That's great. That's great. This is actually a great one. I only had Joe Burrow here, so
I had actually two. I had Baker Mayfield. The other one's not quite like a it's not quite a, what did you call it, comeback player?
Comeback.
But he's he's trending there. I think Baker just outspeeds him, but it was Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff. And I guess potentially Sam Darnold too. But like
Sam Darnold after
elite,
breakouts, so good. Yeah.
Baker,
Talk about Baker.
Baker Mayfield's just been insane. And kind of his performance just where he's climbed from, I think he was last year top 12. I don't know exactly where, but around somewhere between 10 and 12, and to where he is now, starting out the year, just utilizing Chris Godwin to just such a crazy amount where Chris Godwin was, looking like he was Justin Jefferson out there as far as performance wise and numbers, to then losing him to then now having to make, K-Dot and Mike Evans, who just, I don't know. I know Mike Evans.
And then he lost Mike Evans for 3 weeks. Yeah. Like this is such a good choice, Dave. Like, I wish I had thought of this myself, because now I'm thinking about it. Did you know that Baker, after his rookie year, was like dynasty QB2? Because he had like a monster rookie year. This is back probably before we were playing. I only know this because I looked it up. Before we were playing, his rookie year, he put up a really good season. It was like him and Mahomes were QB1 and QB2 or something like that. And then he completely fell off. And then he's completely come back from the dead the last couple of years in Tampa. What a great he's QB4 overall right now. And he spent half his year without Chris Godwin and a third of his year without Mike Evans. Like, I still remember those weeks when he was throwing to Sterling Shepard and fucking Jalen McMillan and some other whatever potatoes are on that team. Trey Palmer,
Todd White.
Potato. Actual potato of potato. He's the sweet potato of potatoes. Give him that.
He's the king, Mr. Potato. I think he and is crazy too. How much praise, and I know Jaden Daniels does some cooler things with his feet, but he's not doing anything like, he's not fucking jumping over a guy backwards like Saquon crazy. And for all the, I know he's a rookie, but all the praise that he's getting and Baker still scoring him, like, and no one seems to care, is just mind-boggling.
And Baker's good on his legs too. Like, he's picking up running yards.
He can scoot.
He can scoot.
He's got the little Mahomes scoot going. He's got this little like 10-yard chunks that
he's got 300 rush yards as a quarterback, dude. Which is
it's probably top 5, top 6. I'm just guessing.
It's 11th, but I mean, you're dealing with guys like Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray.
Justin Fields played this year.
Right. Brock Purdy actually has more rushing yards than him, which is so surprising. I take back everything I ever said about him. All right. I thought that was great. I had Joe Burrow for this, but I think Baker Mayfield's just as fitting. The next one, so I'll do running back. I had comeback player of the year, Josh Jacobs. 2 years ago, Josh Jacobs was RB1 overall. Put up an unbelievable year. Last year comes back, puts up an RB28 season, leaves Las Vegas, signs with the Packers on this fraud, weird contract situation where it's like a 4-year deal, but it's not a 4-year deal. It's like a 1-year deal with an option and a vesting and a 401k program. I don't know what it is, and he comes out and he's balling to the tune of an RB8 coming into Monday night. So not even including his stats from tonight. He's RB8 right now. He already know he scored a touchdown. So he's probably going to finish in that top, at least in that top 6 to 7 running backs. Like, what a resurgence. He's changed the way the Packers offense functions. Like, they actually have options, and it sucks to be a Packers pass catching owner because every week someone zeros. Jaden Reed a couple weeks ago, Tucker Kraft a few weeks ago, Romeo Doubs earlier in the year, Christian Watson like 5 or 6 times a year, Dontavian Wicks 5 or 6 times a year. Like, someone's going to zero, except for Josh Jacobs, because they can now function as a complete offense with Jacobs. And I faded him heavy on Underdog. I faded him heavy in redraft. I have 0 Jacobs anywhere, and it's fucking railing me from behind. I don't like it.
I have one more.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I didn't pick him, actually. Chuba Hubbard.
Oh, I have him for breakout, but yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't have breakout. I only saw you come back and breakout. I got you.
Yeah, sorry, that was a new category I added as I was running out of. I had more. I think I wanted to put Chuba in here, and I was save him. We'll talk about him during breakouts. Yeah,
that's fine.
So let's move on to wide receiver. I had Terry McLaurin for this because he was the perfect for this category. You used him already but I will mention it since we didn't talk about during his MVP. He went from perennially wide receiver 20-ish to finally semi-breaking out to a top 15 wide receiver 2 years ago. last year he slipped back to wide receiver 28. And I think everybody was kind of like, well, writing's on the wall. Like Terry just really doesn't have it. Like he's a good player, but he just doesn't have that like oomph to get over the edge. And yeah, he's propped up by a few fluky 80-yard touchdowns, but he's been wide receiver 5 on the year. Like unfucking believable. He was my comeback. But Dave, give me a comeback.
What's your other category called?
Breakout, which is like to me, it was either they had high expectations and they finally broke out, or they kind of came from nowhere and broke out. Like,
okay, so maybe the first guy, if you might have him in your breakout, is Drake London.
I didn't have him in anywhere in here because I think I've talked enough about him.
I know. That's a surprise. But yeah, Drake London is the one for me. It's not quite comeback. It's kind of more breakout, but they kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, I think for him, it's just I wrote him off, and I thought he had potential.
Hey, this is growth, Dave. This is growth.
It wasn't coming to fruition, and for me, I think it kind of goes both ways. To me, it's the same thing as Terry going to 5 and him going from whatever 30, who knows, to top 10. I think Drake London's got to be in the conversation. So I think it'll be interesting next year to see where it plays out between like him and Wilson, and Pickett's kind of always the odd man out. But I'm curious to see how it plays out next year. But London for me is some guy that had a big, to me, was a comeback player where he finally showed what he could do.
Yeah, I agree. Last one here is I have for tight end is Hunter Henry. So he had a stretch for 3 years. I don't know if he was with the Patriots yet, but where he was like a fringe tight end 1. He was like tight end 9, tight end 10, tight end 12, tight end 9, like always giving you hope that he was going to be good. And you were just like, oh, he just needs to get unlocked. Kind of like what we say with a lot of players. And in the last 2 years, he was tight end 22 and tight end 19. Basically, Hunter Henry's dead. It was this guy just doesn't have it. He's getting older. He's 30 years old. And now coming into Monday night, he's tight end 8 on the season. To me, he finally resurged. He proved his worth. He became basically the number 1 read for Drake May on a weekly basis. Maybe not the most valuable fantasy asset in terms of fantasy upside every week, but he was the stable floor. He was the safety blanket. He was the, whatever you like to do when you're scared. Dave, I don't want to ask you, but he was that guy for Drake May. And to me, he was the guy who came back and kind of proved his worth in terms of being a top 12 dynasty asset and probably a top 100 pick in fantasy redraft next year.
That would be a hot take. No, that would be a hot take. There's no little far. I can let one go if you want. I'm actually a little surprised because the one guy that I have that I would have put in this category that's actually a true comeback player is Zach Ertz.
That was the other one I had on the list, but I felt like it was tough because I know it was injury related, but it was like he's had just a few good games. I guess what is he right now in the season? I don't even know. I guess that's
12.
actually so it's good. 12. Yeah, so Zach Ertz is a good one. What do you got for Zach Ertz on here?
Nothing crazy. I think he was a streaming tight end, kind of similar to Henry. You could have picked him either on waivers, probably after the first few weeks, and maybe even in the middle of the season. He could have absolutely won you weeks. He won me weeks. I benched Sam Laporta in several leagues to play Zach Ertz because he was having a hot run. He's not going to put up 15 points each week, but you could either get 15 or you could get 7 or 8. And I think he's just showing, and maybe more, but I think he's showing that he just still has some life left to him. Because for me, I also have Ben Sinnott, who I was hoping for the Trey McBride move where Zach Ertz plays for 5 games, gets injured, and then he teaches Ben Sinnott how to be an elite tight end. And hopefully that'll happen next year. But
yeah,
in the episode last week, if you rewatched last week's Drafts and Draughts, tight ends peak at 27, 28 and over. So I got 6-7 years of Ben Sinnott.
100%. I was just going to say that it's encouraged me to think about, obviously when guys break out early, it's great. But to not give up on guys who I really believed in throughout the process, and I was like, this guy has potential, to not just say, oh, he didn't hit in year 1, especially for tight ends. Like to say, I'm willing to hold a guy 2-3 years before I even consider writing them off or selling short on them.
So you're holding Chigga Conquo?
Yeah, I actually just picked him back up in my Superflex league a couple weeks ago. And it's been like, I'm so stoked because I've added and dropped him like 5 times this year. And I was like, fuck,
I know.
Yes. It's kind of what I do with Tucker Kraft and the PDFDL. And now he's hitting earlier than he probably should have. But let's move on to breakouts. I'll go first now on QB since you took QB the last one. My breakout for this year was Sam Darnold. I think that the big thing for him is he's He was highly regarded as a prospect. He was supposed to be good. He got drafted by the Jets and just kind of flopped around, just real flaccid in New York, went down to Carolina, fucking didn't do anything. And just, I think everybody just assumed he was dead, and he went to Minnesota, and the parting of the seas, the stars aligned. JJ McCarthy gets hurt. Kevin O'Connell is brilliant. That offense has weapons everywhere. They have a good run game. They have a good defense, to the point where there was never pressure on Darnold to do anything great. All he had to do is be a game manager, but he's been nothing but a baller. I saw some stat today that he's put up like 8. Maybe it's not 8. I don't know how many, but he's put X amount of games where he's had a 100 QB rating or better. And that's the most in Vikings history this season. I don't know what his future holds. He's on a 1-year deal, a prove it year, $6 million a year deal with the Vikings for the season. And I have to imagine if he leads them anywhere beyond a first round exit, he has to get re-signed and extended to some sort of 4 or 5 year 100, probably the Kirk Cousins deal, a 4-year 100 and call it 130 million, maybe not 200 like Cousins got, but he's only 28 years old. The guy has saved seasons from waivers, and to me, he's the breakout QB of the year, where he came from nowhere. Maybe he had high expectations at some point in his career, and he never lived up to him, and now he's just the guy. What about you? Was there anyone else that came to mind?
No, I think Sam Darnold's perfect.
Awesome.
I'll jump into running back. My running back, it's a breakout, but it's an early breakout, is Chase Brown.
I had Chase Brown and Chuba Hubbard were the two I had, so I'm so glad you've named them both.
Just absolute stud. It's only his second season, but man, and we kind of talked that there's the running room here if he gets some injuries for him to take over the lead backfield, and my God, does he look great?
So fast.
Unfortunately, it just means that I prioritized the wrong people because he's just looked so elite. So, but yeah, Chase Brown to me is just someone that I don't even know where the ceiling is for him, but easily top 10 running back next year to draft into, especially on the team he's on too. And there's potential of like T. Higgins isn't there. Like, is there more role there because it's not as elite? I don't know. Just Chase Brown to the moon.
Dude, it kills me because I thought Chase Brown was an actual fucking potato. Like, you say Rachaad White is a potato, like tongue in cheek, putting up an RB3 season. And I was like, as a rookie, I was like, I think Chase Brown sucks ass. And then preseason, the McGiblets offered me Chase Brown straight up for Calvin Ridley, and I laughed at him. And now I look so stupid. Oh my God. The only thing I do worry about is they do need another running back. Maybe not. I'm not saying they need a better running back, but that doesn't mean they won't consider it. Right now, tankathon.com has them mocked to take Ashton Jeanty, whatever his name is, 11th overall in the first round, which would be devastating to your Chase Brown shares. That's not saying that's going to happen, but I do think the Bengals are going to draft another running back. I don't know when, but the fact of the matter is, I really heard a really good thought process quote one day that was like, just because somebody is doing well in an offense doesn't mean that NFL franchise doesn't go, wow, if Chase Brown is doing good, imagine if we had Ashton Jeanty, what he would be doing. Or imagine if we had Omari and Hampton, what he would be doing. Or imagine if we had whatever, the next rookie guy. Like, just because your fantasy asset is doing good doesn't mean NFL teams give a fuck. Like, they could say, look how good we're doing with this bozo. Imagine if we had a real running back. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. I do think they're going to take someone. It could be a 6th-round running back like Chase Brown. But the other guy, since I was going to skip to running wide receiver since that's my category, but I did want to give a shout out to Chuba Hubbard because you mentioned him earlier, and I think he belongs in here, and I think he's just as much of a breakout as Chase Brown. He just put up a 32-point game in semifinals weeks. He was looked at as the stopgap to Jonathan Brooks, and he's done nothing but ball out. He's a top 10 fantasy running back this season. He does everything well, does everything good. The pride of Canada. He's Canadian. What else is there to say? I think Jonathan Brooks tore his ACL again. He's going to go into next year as a RB1 in Dynasty, or at least a top 15 running back. Maybe not top 10, but in that 10 to 15 range, he's probably going to be, well, with rookies, it's going to be really tough because I think there's going to be 3 or 4 rookie running backs that are in the top 10 of Dynasty running backs next year. But so Chuba's the guy I just want to give a shout out to. But receivers, my breakouts, I have 2 here. I have Jerry Jeudy and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think those are the 2 guys that I think they both broke out in their own different ways. One has been around for a while, one has been around for 1 year, and they both had crazy high expectations and colossally failed. And they both have completely changed the thought process around rookie picks. Like now, I think every single person out there holding a Quentin Johnston, holding a Traylon Burks, holding a Sky Moore, holding a Christian Watson is going to feel like, oh, but what if I have Jerry Jeudy? Now I have to hold and wait for that year 5 breakout. Same with like JSN is now
Let me ask you a question then real quick. Do you believe it?
Jeudy or JSN or both or just in general?
Jeudy.
It's tough. I think I mentioned it in my efficiency episode that Jerry Jeudy is the only guy in the top like 20 whose efficiency stats are like below average, to the point where I think he's really propped up by the volume that Jameis Winston was providing, which is unsustainably high volume. He wasn't getting like a 25% target share. Not to say Jeudy isn't good. I just think he's best.
I don't know when Jameis took over, but his prior low was 12.9 starting in week 8.
Mm-hmm.
He had 4 points last week.
Yeah.
And that was DTR. So it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, not to say he's a bad wide receiver. Like, I think he is a good wide receiver, but it's also pretty easy to be a good wide receiver when you're averaging 9 targets a game.
Yeah. When their offense is throwing 60 times a game, that's not sustainable. And and I hate to do it because I don't want it to seem like I'm a slam one of Bohm's guys that he might try to sell. But like any reasonable guy who looks at that stat and says, oh, 9 targets a game, that's great. Like that's 9 targets out of 60. That's I don't even know what that math is. It's a 3 out of 20. It's a 15% target share.
Well, 9 is very sustainable if you are that good of a wide receiver and you are getting 33% of the targets. But yeah, when you're getting 9 of 60 and it's just with a freak guy that just is the like Brett Favre's, then yeah, you're probably not going to sustain that when the guy's getting benched.
That's the hard part for me is I don't think anything. To me, and I've said this before, or maybe I haven't said it on the pod, is to me, even though Jeudy ranks as a wide receiver 1, he profiles as like a budget version of like Devontae Smith. Like he needs to be on an offense as the wide receiver 2 behind an alpha. And I think he's going to thrive in that role where he's a fantasy wide receiver 25 to 30, 20 to 30, where you're like, he has wide receiver 2 upside and wide receiver 3 downside, and he can give you explosive wide receiver 1 weeks. But he's undoubtedly been the breakout of the year. He's over 1,000 yards. I think he's wide receiver 10 or 12 on the year. Like you can't discount that. He has been a breakout. He did lead some teams to this point in the playoffs. And to speak a little bit less to it, just JSN, I'm just pumped about JSN because I refuse to cave. Although I will say, same breath as Jeudy, I'm still always a little suspect because I saw how low the lows can be with JSN. But it's hard after seeing what he's done over the last like 6 to 8 weeks to say, oh, it's just a fluke at this point. Like if you've watched the games and watched the box scores, you'll say this guy looks like he can do it. He's getting the screen passes. He's getting the slants. He's getting the deep digs. He's getting the go routes. Like he's getting everything. He's making the shoestring catch. He's making the contested catch. He's making the over the shoulder catch. Like there's nothing where you go, man, this just doesn't look real. Like he looks the part. He may not be elite at anything. He's certainly not a burner. He's not Jameson Williams. He's certainly not going to go moss people like George Pickens. He's not going to actually shake you out of your shoes with this shifty route like Zay Flowers or Tank Dell's going to do. But he can do everything that a receiver is asked to do. And I think it's really cool that it's like, and then I look at guys like Marv and I'm like, why aren't you giving Marv a quick slant? Why can't you do that one time? Why do you have him running these go routes and whatever? Done with wide receivers. If you have a different one that you think is the breakout of this year, let me know. Otherwise, we can move on to tight end.
I think that was great.
Awesome. Be up for your tight end breakout. This was a tough one for me. I finally got one, but it was tough.
I mean, oops. Yeah, I mean, you already said Hunter Henry. He probably would have been my breakout, but I got another guy for you. I would go Jonnu Smith.
Yes, that's what I had. Let's go, dude. We are synchronized. We are docking right now. We are touching tips. We are what? Anyways,
that's how we're supposed to do it. Yeah, dude, Jonnu Smith, man, he was the guy. He's very Hunter Henry. He's the black Hunter Henry. I mean, that's really what he is. He always saw potential. He'd have like 2 games a year getting 15 points. Every other game would be 2. And finally, it's kind of coming together. Miami. I think he signed a longer deal recently, maybe. Even if he's not, I think the potential's there that he could be a great tight end for the next couple of years. He's right in the age wheelhouse, 29. So yeah, Jonnu Smith. That's my comeback player.
Yeah.
Or
That's
no,
breakout. Yeah, I had Jonnu as the breakout, and the big thing that you've probably all seen on social media is like, maybe fucking Arthur Smith was right to feed Jonnu Smith and not give the ball to Kyle Pitts, because Jonnu Smith looks like a fucking dog, and Kyle Pitts looks like a fucking pit stain. Like Jonnu Smith is him. He's fast. He's a freak. He can block. He can run routes. He can run. He can do every. He can catch the ball and do things after the catch. He can do screens. He can do everything. He's so fun to watch. He fits perfectly in Miami. He's the breakout of the year at tight end. But yeah. All right, Dave, we're an hour into it. Do you want to do busts of the year, jump right to 2025, or call it quits? Or we can do both. We can do busts and 2025 players that we think could be people to target.
But I would say let's either stop now or let's just do busts are my 2 votes.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's worthwhile to talk about some busts. You can start with QB.
I mean,
the list goes on forever.
Yeah, I mean the two obvious ones kind of based on cost, and you can even the 2 obvious ones are obviously Mahomes and CJ Stroud.
Oh my God, Dave, you're like, are you looking at my notes?
I haven't seen the notes yet.
I have Mahomes, Stroud, and Cousins.
Cousins is a pretty good one too. I would even throw Caleb in there in some regard too, because Caleb was always being drafted probably at 11 or 12, and he's had like 4 decent games. That's it.
Yeah, but he's a rookie. Hard to call him a bust. I have Marvin as my wide receiver bust, so it's
yeah, I mean that's for sure. So yeah, I mean Mahomes just I actually do wonder where Mahomes would have finished if Rashee Rice was healthy, because their production was just so efficient in the first few games that I wonder, in all these games that have been close, would they just not have been close? Would they have just blown them out by 21 points? But they don't have the right team talent to do so they can't blow them out. And so Mahomes is kind of stuck in this loop of like, I don't know. It's just something that I thought was interesting in my head is once Rashee Rice got injured, not that his stats necessarily got worse, but would they have been more synergistic in year 2 with Rashee Rice? And then, so and again, Mahomes is just so good, I give him a quasi pass, but he's had now a couple bad years. And I wonder if people are going to buy it again next year. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be the CMC. Like they'll okay, he had a bad year once. We'll buy it again the second year, but the third year we're out. He's going for half the cost. Yeah. And then who's the other guy said?
CJ Stroud.
Thank you. Yeah, CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud it's kind of the same tail of tapes of Laporta. I mean, he's going to be my bust as well. It's just we always talk about sophomore QBs can have this regression because that defenses start to see them and figure them out. It just felt weird. It felt like it was more of an offensive line issue. And so I think if you start to see the Texans really draft the offensive line, and assuming Tank Dell comes back healthy at some point, then I think CJ Stroud is going to be fine. I think CJ Stroud right now, though, just he hasn't had the right protection in the pocket to be able to make the plays he wants downfield to all of his receivers. And he lost Diggs too. I mean, he lost Diggs early, who he was throwing the ball a ton to. I wonder if Diggs is going to come back. Tank Dell's out again. I don't know. I think he's just having a tough go, plus offensive line issues. That's where I'm at with him. But I'm not buying either one of them, but I'm not against buying one of them, I guess. I'd probably put them in the same category as Purdy. And Dan offered me Mahomes straight up for Daniels, and I said no.
Yeah. No, I don't blame you. I actually traded away Daniels for Mahomes, and I traded away Daniels and Waddle for Mahomes and JT early in the year. So I kind of feel stupid. I guess
Taylor?
JT. Yeah. So it's not terrible, not my best, but yeah. Anyway, so I don't disagree with anything. The weird thing for me is like I know Stroud statistically did bad, but I didn't feel it. Like I don't have any Stroud, so I didn't notice it. I have Nico in one league, and to me, Nico balled out whenever he played. So I felt like it was tough for me to realize Stroud was doing so poorly. I do have Mahomes. And the weird thing is like, it was frustrating, but he's giving you like a stable floor in Superflex where it's like, wow, you still know he had 25-point upside at any time. He just never really needed to. You didn't feel like he was regressing. You felt like he was just not, the game script was in a sense not providing him a chance to thrive. So it's tough for me to fade him as a fantasy asset because I think he's still obviously a top 3 most talented quarterback in the league and has top 1 fantasy upside. We've already seen it. I don't think he regressed where we say, wow, Mahomes looked like shit this year. We just say the fucking Chiefs defense dominated. And that was a weird one for me. Is like Mahomes clearly didn't play good. But anyways, the running backs, that was mine. You might think the running back bust of the year was CMC. And what if I told you that was wrong? So to me, what we talked about in the last episode is that when a guy gets hurt, like CMC, he really doesn't bust and hurt you because you're throwing him on IR and you're not thinking about it. He's just out of sight, out of mind. What really kills you is when a guy you invested in and you keep in your lineup every week and you keep throwing it out there saying, well, he's going to turn it around and he's going to fix it and he's going to be that guy I needed that I expected to be my 2nd or 3rd or 4th round pick this year. And that guy is regrettably Travis Etienne. So my most heavily owned player on Underdog this year was Travis Etienne. I thought, again, mostly because you could have got Travis Etienne in the 4th round on Underdog. In redraft leagues, he was going in the 2nd. So to me, I was like, I am getting a fucking massive discount on Etienne. Underdog hasn't caught up to the finish he actually provided. And what the fuck, whether or not he was injured or the Jags were inept or the coaching staff was stupid or the offensive line sucked, it didn't matter. We're not talking about, could he still be good? I don't fucking care. The point of the matter is, just like we just said with Mahomes, could Mahomes still be good? Doesn't matter. He was the bust of the year. Etienne was the bust of the year. And I'm going to guess he sank most redraft teams. And unless in Dynasty, unless you were savvy enough to trade for Bijan Robinson in week 4, he probably sank a lot of Dynasty teams too. Just saying, seriously, if you didn't recognize that something was off with him, whether it was usage or injury or whatnot, he killed you. And that's not to say he can't bounce back and be strong next year. I mentioned in a previous episode, your best case scenario for an ETN holder is they decide to go one or the other. They either get rid of him, they cut him, they bench him and go Bigsby, or they start him. The worst case scenario next year is you're stuck in the same fucking situation where they're like, let's give Bigsby 12 carries and ETN 8, but let's throw the ball to ETN 4 times and give Bigsby the touchdown. And you're like, why did they both suck now?
Hopefully, I listen. I wouldn't be. Keep ETN with Jacksonville. I don't need Tanks Bigsby there. Get Tanks Bigsby to the fucking someone else. I don't know. Get him to the.
I can't. They picked up his 5th-year option. They just should have let him go and let Bigsby take the lion's share, drafted a running back behind him, let ETN go to.
But if they let him go, it's just they have nothing to him, so then they can try to go sell him. I don't know. That was my thing too.
The Jags are inept, man.
If you're gonna hold his contract, why not use him? Show how good he is, and trade his ass. But like now, like he looks like a piece of shit. Like you're gonna get a 6 for him, maybe. It's just like,
yeah. Why are you running him 4 times a game? If you, like you said, if you're gonna pick up his contract, why not these last 3 games? But seriously, not self-serving. Showcase him. Give him 15 carries. Give him 5 targets, and show to other teams, hey, come get ETN this offseason. If you don't get an early running back you love, you can throw him in your backfield, and he might not be that good, but at least you're proving it, or you prove he's not, or vice versa. Do that with Bigsby. Give him the lion's share and show other teams, hey, ETN was hurt. We're going to trade him away because we got our guy, or we're going to trade. I just think the Jags are so mismanaged as a team. But yeah, let's move on to wide receiver. Unless you have a different another bust of the year for running back, let's move on to wide receiver busts.
All right, wide receiver busts. I don't know why I'm blanking on a good wide receiver bust. Actually, I do have one.
I have 2.
I have a perfect one. Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill.
Very, very good bust.
The exact same story you just said, because he.
You couldn't take him out of your lineup.
Listen, you've never here's a metaphor. It's like when you have a dad, but your dad didn't leave you. He's not dead, but your dad's still like kind of there, and it's like, hey, dad, you gonna come to my thing? He's like, yeah,
he's an alcoholic.
He's like, yeah, I'll go to your sports game. I'll do something like that someday. And then he just never shows up. That's fucking Tyreek Hill. You know why? Because he also had 6 children this year or whatever it was.
Oh my
5
God.
children. And so Tyreek Hill's that dad. He's also that player where he's on your roster. You think this guy is going to go for 50 at any day. Someday he's going to show up and go for 50. And you know what? He's just not going to do that anymore. He's in his father phase and he's just fucking off. And he might just show up to one day at school and that's it. And then you're going to hold on to that for the next 20 years. And that's Tyreek Hill.
Bro, that is the new caption of the show is having Tyreek Hill is worse than having a dead dad. It's having a deadbeat dad. Oh man, that's so good. All right, I'll quickly mention mine because I think it's good to highlight him. I mentioned Marvin Harrison. His expectations were too high. His route tree sucked. He sucked. Not just blaming it on route tree. The scheme sucked. Everything about it mostly is tied to his expectation because he still had a decent year as far as rookie stats are concerned. But based on what you expected out of him, he was a bust. He was drafted first round in redraft, killed those teams. The other one I had was Debo. He just looks like a ball of sludge. Like he looks like somewhere between a Grimer and a Muck. Like he's just moving in slow motion. He couldn't get anything going. Yeah, he had a decent game last week. I'm not going to blame it. There's no one else to blame. Like McCaffrey missed a bunch of time. Ayuk missed a bunch of time. Kittle missed a game. Purdy's been there every game. Like it's just no real excuse for how poor he's played. And
I think Purdy missed one, but yeah, still.
Did he? Yeah.
Debo's. Debo's. I haven't had a comparison to him, but he's just. It feels like he's always injured, but he's never. But he's always in the game. He's kind of the same thing as Tyreek, but it's like a lesser version. Because like Tyreek, at least he's healthy, and he actually could go for 40 in a game. Debo's just kind of like, yeah, my rib hurts, but I'm gonna be here, and I guess I could go for 20, but I'm probably gonna go for 9, and then that's his week every week.
Yeah,
it's super frustrating.
But yeah, the last one I had for tight ends, I had Sam Laporta. I think that's probably gonna be pretty consensus. Unfortunately, I mentioned it in the last episode. The hardest part about Laporta was beyond just his production, but in a one-off position like tight end and quarterback, where you feel like, well, I have to start him. I have to start him every week. So you just stomach all of those terrible weeks over and over and over again. But because you have Laporta, and most game theory would say, don't roster 2 tight ends, that also says, well, Jonnu Smith is smashing, but I'm never going to start him over Laporta, so I'm just going to keep Laporta. Oh, well, the opportunity to trade for a mid-tier tight end, like maybe like Pat Freiermuth or Tucker Kraft, where you would say in Dynasty, you'd go, I'm still never going to play these guys over Laporta, so to me, they're useless. When they could have probably helped, it's just he killed teams. But to me, he's still a guy of that whole second or third tier of tight end, whatever it is, he's probably the guy I'm still trying to sneaky buy low on. I just think he's too talented. He's shown, if you watch him play, he looks good. He just
he's made some incredible catches.
That over-the-shoulder catch last week on that fake fumble was such a good catch. Like that's a hard play for tight ends to make.
And it's so funny too. We were talking in the preseason. I remember this. I said I was drafting Laporta over McBride because Laporta didn't add a weapon. McBride did, and then sure enough, they fucking did add a weapon because Jameson Williams is also like a guy, and it's just like, and Marvin Sanders apparently poop on a stick, even though it's the 101. Like it just it makes sense. It doesn't. Super.
This is why fantasy is awesome because it's just so random. But I think to me this kind of reinforces looking at this list of busts we just named. Of all these busts, like several of these players are on championship teams in my leagues that I'm in. To me, it reinforces that missing on players does not hurt you as much as hitting on other players helps. So I think that to me, that says take risks, take chances on profiles that you love, because if you're wrong, it's not going to kill you. When you get them right, when you hit the Puka, when you hit the Nico, when you hit the Trey McBride, when you hit the JSN, when you hit the Drake London, when you hit the breakout, whatever, the Jonnu Smith, the Chuba Hubbard, when you hit that guy, that uplifts your team so much more that it's worth it when you start to get an inkling. And I give you a ton of credit for this on Rashee Rice and Tank Dell, and it's so sad they're both hurt, but you got an inkling on those guys and you probably overpaid. But those are the type of like league winning moves that teams should be making. And in the same breath, not holding on to like, oh man, I whiffed on this guy that I invested in. It sucked. It doesn't fucking matter because one bad player in your team doesn't kill a team as much as one good player helps it. So that being said, I got nothing else other than I had a few guys in 2025 to target, but I'm not going to go through that right now.
I mean, that can be a whole episode.
Yeah. Definitely. We could throw that in, right after this season. So Dave, I'm so glad you came back. Love seeing you. Good luck wrapping presents tonight. You got any closing remarks to our faithful fans? You're muted.
There you go. I said I was going to. It's perfect because I was saying, don't listen to me. I'm a total fraud. I can't even turn off my microphone from mute to not mute. And yeah, this might be my last fantasy podcast and my last fantasy season because I
shut the fuck up.
I made one playoff out of like 6. I lost all my underdog leagues, and it's depressing. I've never been more depressed about fantasy football than I am this season because I just was a dumpster fire. And I think it's because this podcast made me think more. And I thought I was smarter than I was, and I'm actually an idiot. So,
no, fantasy's so random, man. That's very self-aware of you to say, but I think as much shit as I give you and others give you, it's so much fun playing leagues with you because you bring the energy, you bring that shit talk, you bring the noise, you bring the ruckus. But seriously, there's at the end of the day, 1 out of 12 teams wins every year. That's what 8% of players are winners at the end of their seasons or whatever the math checks out to. Like, it's just, even there's only 16% of all players are even in their finals. Like the odds of you having a good season by your standards are so little that it's like, it's easy to get down. And I was trying to talk Matt Gilday off a ledge this morning. And I don't know if it worked. I haven't heard from him all day, but it's tough. And I think people need to just realize that it's fantasy. Like it's easy to get caught up, but I can't wait to talk about PDFDL 2025. I genuinely think it's going to be the most exciting year yet. I think there's a ton of parity in the pipeline, and I'm looking forward to it. But with that, we'll sign off. We'll see you guys next week. Love y'all.
See ya.